Before we even talk about arguments for or against God, we need to back up and ask one simple question. How do you even make sense of the world that you're living in? Every worldview has to explain reality, logic, morality, science, meaning. And the truth is, the starting point determines everything. If you start with God, you have a foundation for knowledge itself, an external, rational, moral creator who makes the world intelligible. But if you start with atheism, all you have is matter, chance, and time. And from that, you can't get universal moral standards, unchanging laws of logic, and you can't even explain why science works. Yet every atheist uses logic, they appeal to morality, they trust in scientific laws, but none of those things fit within a purely material, random universe. So the moment someone says there is no God, they've already lost the ability to justify the very tools they're using to argue. That's what I want to show you today, that atheism collapses under its own weight, and that Christianity doesn't just give better answers, it gives the only foundation that makes knowledge possible in the first place. Every worldview has to do more than just offer opinions. It must actually explain the world we live in. In the Christian worldview, we begin with God, the eternal and necessary foundation for all knowledge. In this perspective, because God is rational, moral, and consistent, the universe he created reflects his character. That's why logic works, why morality has authority, and why science is even possible. Atheism, on the other hand, begins with chance, matter, and time. But those ingredients by themselves cannot produce immaterial, universal, unchanging realities like the laws of logic or objective moral standards. If everything is just particles in motion, then nothing about reasoning, morality, or scientific regularity can be absolute or binding. As presuppositional apologetics says, if you start with no God, you've already lost the ability to justify the very reasoning you're using. Think about it. Every worldview must answer the big questions. Why does logic exist? Why do we call certain things right and others wrong? Why does science work in a universe that should be random if no mind stands behind it? And where does meaning come from at all? If a worldview cannot account for these basic realities, it collapses. From the Christian perspective, these things flow naturally from the character of God, but atheism must borrow from Christianity, using categories it cannot produce within its own framework. So the real test of truth is not whether a worldview feels good or sounds sophisticated, but whether it can actually explain and justify the world that we all live in. Here's where the tension becomes visible. Atheists use logic to argue against God, but logic itself is immaterial, universal, and unchanging. In a purely material universe, there is no reason something like this should exist or be authoritative. The same is true of morality. Many atheists passionately denounce lying, injustice, oppression, or cruelty, and rightfully so. But without God, moral claims like these reduce to personal preferences, cultural opinions, or evolutionary conveniences.
That's okay, go ahead. There's nothing objectively wrong with you killing me.
From the presuppositionalist standpoint, when someone says that is wrong, they are unintentionally borrowing from the Christian worldview to even make the category of wrong coherent. The tools they are using to deny God actually depend on the very God they are denying. This leads to the central question. On what basis do you account for logic, morality, and science in your worldview? When pressed consistently, the atheistic worldview cannot provide a grounding for these realities. It can describe them, but it cannot justify them. The Christian worldview, however, grounds them in eternal, rational, moral nature of God. Logic reflects his mind. Morality reflects his character, and scientific order reflects his sustaining power. From the perspective of atheism, they must borrow Christian principles just to function, which is seen as a self-refutation. If the worldview cannot support the tools it needs to argue, it collapses by its own standard. Think of it like this. Imagine someone is standing on a bridge while arguing that that bridge does not exist. They're using the very structure they deny in order to make their case. That's how presuppositional apologetics illustrates the atheist's use of logic, morality, and scientific truth. For example, if someone says, "You're wrong, and here's why," they've already assumed several things: that truth exists, that logical laws are real and binding, and that reasoning is a reliable pathway to truth. But in a worldview built on matter and chance, these things have no ultimate grounding. They are not material, they are not observable objects, and they do not arise from physical processes alone. Within the Christian worldview, however, these tools make sense because they reflect God's unchanging nature. So from a presuppositional perspective, when someone denies God while using logic or morality to make their point, it's like sawing off a branch they're sitting on. Their arguments depend on foundations their worldview does not have. But the point here isn't just to win debates. Romans 1 says that people suppress the truth about God and unrighteousness, not because of lack of evidence, but their rebellion against the one who made them. The solution is not better arguments or sharper arguments, but the gospel, the message of Christ crucified and risen, which is the foundation for truth and the only hope for reconciliation to God. From this theological perspective, atheism collapses under its own weight, while Christianity stands firm because it is rooted in the character and revelation of God. So here's the bottom line. Atheism cannot justify logic, morality, or science. Christianity explains them coherently and completely. Therefore, atheism fails as a worldview, and the gospel stands as the only solid foundation for truth, meaning, and knowledge. Without God, you can't know anything at all. With Christ, you have the foundation for everything.